Hi everyone and welcome to webinar number 7. I'm Catherine, your host, and we are here for the ICT Educators Virtual Development Series. Today I'm so excited to bring you 3 guests, and we're going to be having a panel discussion style webinar today where we're going to be allowing you to connect with industry professionals and education experts today. So today is going to be looking at 3 areas, and it's about meeting your panels, and I want to introduce you to the 3 guests that I have with me today, and the work that they're doing within education and the IT industry as well. Then we're going to do the remainder of it will be a panel discussion where I've got a set of questions to really think about what's happening in industry and how we can relate that to education and how we can support our students as they move towards a career, not just in IT, but a career that uses IT as well. At the very end of the session today, I've also allocated some time to open up the floor so you can connect with our speakers as well. Feel free to, at any time, push through any questions that you might have with any of the speakers throughout the session. I'll then make sure that I'll look at those questions later on. As always, all of the resources that we have and we talk about will be available through the ACS ICT Educators Community platform. There will be a designated webinar forum for you where you'll have all the information that we speak about for today. We also have a resource folder for you today, so you can have a look at any of the resources that we talk about. You'll be able to connect with those as well. There's a certificate of attendance for you if you'd like to download that too. So the first speaker that I'd like to introduce today is Jason Gao, and he is the CEO of Qubit Kits. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Catherine. Hello, Australia. Jason Gao here, speaking from California, United States. So it's a pleasure to be a part of this webinar. Thank you, ACS, for organizing such a fantastic series. And what I want to do now is share a little bit about my upbringing and background and what led me to STEM education and how I was able to form the company called Qubit, specifically for primary and secondary STEM education. So what you see here in this slide is a montage of various things I've actually kept, I guess, or my parents have kept over the years since my childhood. I grew up in San Francisco, and both my parents encouraged me in learning with my hands and just to be curious about the world. And so most of my upbringing involved taking apart a lot of broken things, figuring out how they worked, fixing some, and also breaking some things that were perfectly fine. And what you see here are some projects that I've built in the past, mostly in primary school age. And also a lot of my sketches and notebooks. I think one of my best friends growing up has always been a good pen and a notepad. Just to be able to jot things down, draw things, sketch things. It just, all of the thoughts and ideas I've had. I remember after watching a movie called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, I immediately drew, I was about 8 years age. I drew a shrink ray, like the electronic diagram of a shrink ray, but I only, knew very, very little, but it was fun to do that nevertheless. This is a close-up of one of the projects I did, again, around 8 years of age, and probably one of the first big hands-on project that I did with my father, and we call it the scrap toy. It was for a school project, and as you can see, every bit of this was built out of spare parts. The wheels were made out of my mother's used up sewing threads, and a lot of the lights and that canopy you see was from a broken toy. The motor in the back there with the propeller, the motor was from a cassette player, and the propeller we made out of Haagen-Dazs ice cream sticks that we submerged in water, heated that up a little bit to make them nice and soft, and twisted it. And so I had that opportunity to learn a lot with my hands, and it just made me more and more curious about, the physical world and how things worked, and how amazing it is to be able to build almost anything you want. The world is truly our playground. And so that led me to eventually a career in engineering, specifically robotics and mechatronics, And there were some challenges around robotics and automation. I've always struggled to unify software and hardware, getting those two to work seamlessly together, right? You have software engineers and hardware engineers. And so, about 10, 15 years ago, I decided to build a platform to actually help myself and fellow engineers unify hardware and software in something that they might want to create. And that's essentially the underlying technology behind Qubit. We showcased it to at a lot of trade shows, and there was a lot of interest from educators to use that in their science and STEM classrooms. And so eventually that gave me an opportunity to form a team, form a company, and that opened up a whole can of worms into building out, curriculum that had to align to standards, and like what every state here in the United States has like almost a different standard at the time. It's like, oh man, this is much harder than engineering. Working with teachers has been a pleasure. They just work so tirelessly. So shout out to all you teachers out there. But with all this hard work, it's been a real pleasure to be able to create with Qubit this curriculum library for primary and secondary education, where teachers can find resources and implement ready-to-go curriculum in the sciences, in the math, in the integrated STEM subjects, and use this in the classroom to build various projects, hands-on projects with the different sensors that the Qubit Kit offers, as well as the software. So our approach has always been a very integrated approach. We don't only do robotics or coding. We do a lot of sciences, a lot of data capture to really get students to be comfortable and well-rounded in the entire STEM field, and not just focused on one. So these are some projects from the classroom, and a lot of them are built with raw construction materials. You can see on the top right, that's robotic dragon. I have a video of that, but the wings can flap, the jaws open and shut, the tail wags, and that was built, by a 9-year-old. And so it's just fantastic to see that being created out of cardboard and just, regular parts. I don't want to take too much time, but we can come back to this later, and there's more on the website. I'm just very happy to be a part of this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jason. I absolutely love utilizing qubits, and one of my favorite activities to do is that you can put the qubit together to create an earthquake simulator table as well. So then the students, they can code if they want to, but what I love about it is that you can create it so it moves and simulates an earthquake, but you can also then use the dial to change the severity of the earthquake as well. It's one of my most favorite activities to do with it, and something really simple to do, but it's also then bringing it into a real life situation as well. And that's something that I really admire about Qubit, and how they've taken all these real life applications and been able to put them into robotics with the curriculum. Thank you so much, Jason, and thank you so much for joining us today as well. Our next panel expert is, I'm going to now introduce Diwali, and he is the CEO of Grandshake. And that is a company that prepares students within their work experience. Thank you so much, Diwali.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deval, and I'm a founder and CEO of a grand company. We're based right here in Brisbane, sunny Australia, sunny Queensland. A little bit of my story. I'm a perfect example of Generation Next. The reason I say this is since the age of 17, we were coming out of high school. I got thrown in the deeper end to run an internet cafe business that I had no idea about, and through that led me to just experiment and exercise different industries in different trades. I studied nursing and sort of dropped out. Didn't really like the theory side of it, but enjoyed the practical aspects of that job. And then from that point led me to go off and do a trade. I became a motor mechanic. Loved it for a while. I went up north to Gladstone, which is again a mining town here in Queensland. Worked there as a diesel fitter for 2.5 years. Got my hands dirty. That was fun. And then that sort of pathway led me into marine engineering, where I worked with a marine company They dredge tons of sand out of ocean because that part of channel needs to be cleared out, but that sand then gets brought back to the CBD to put that forward to the concrete jungle that we building for years. So I've had quite a breadth of experience doing a lot of different things. And since my last job, this is the second startup that I'm leading. The reason I am doing this startup is because of my own journey and my own experience that I've gained by having to go through different careers in different industries and realizing that this is the typical way, and this is probably a very different way to build a set of skill set for this sort of adaptable world of works that we look at these days. I mean, COVID is just a perfect example of how we all needed to adapt it overnight, and so did the students. So I'm passionate about it, and I will quickly walk you guys through some of the things that we're doing at Grand Company. So I've basically put it down in three simple slides. What, how, and why. First thing, what? Definitely, I personally, through my journey, believe that industry experience leads to future skills. Obviously, you can predict up to a certain extent of what sort of skill set there'll be, the students will be needing and the next generation needing, but it's always, you have to play the catch-up game. And there is only a certain level of innovation and sort of that industry skills that are taught in schooling, and where and industry, in fact, is where everything happens. So getting an experience is everything. Getting an experience is everything when you talk about future skills. You get experience, you become more adaptable, and doesn't matter what world or life throws at you, you have the sort of the resilience, the adaptability, all the core soft skills, I suppose, because again, technology, software, everything is changing. Like, we work in technology world, and almost every month there's a new project managing software. There's a new way to do search engine optimization. There are so many tools and so many technology coming in. So being in industry and having that experience is what we believe helps you gain the future skill. The next thing is probably how we do it. So this is, again, right tie back to facilitating meaningful work experiences, which is what we do. We connect with local high schools in Queensland, but also with our new program, we're reaching out to all students throughout Australia. We're building meaningful virtual work experiences through which students get exposure to career programs, they get exposure to that real world experience. And with every program, we co-design our work experiences with a national organization where we can bring in industry mentors that can talk to or answer any question that students might have. They might be silly questions, they might be about a job, might be about money, might be about how they took that particular path to get where they got. So just packaging all that together, and then at the end of the program, each program student receives a micro credential, which is credited by the industry, and they're able to use that whenever they're ready out there looking for a job. So it's a career-ready micro credential. It's shareable. It's digital. It helps them get ahead in life. As we all know, the catch-22 is always there when you have the qualification but you don't have experience. This is designed just to do that. And right through, adaptability is something that we have embedded in each and every one of our programs. Finally, why we do it. Obviously, most people are aware. This is spoken about just about any articles that you read on LinkedIn, or any sort of job or future talks that you go out there. It basically affecting students who go into uni, because there's a huge rate of dropout. There's a huge trend in degree hop. Obviously, the vocational system has had lower completion rate over the years, and the job skill match is just not there. A lot of industry partners that we speak to often struggle to find students who have had the right skill for the job that they have open and available. So that's always disappointing. And at the end of the day, the mental health from the student's perspective is affected because as a student, you go to high school, you get that qualification, then you get told to go uni, you get that qualification, and then you're standing at the door trying to get a job and you get told you don't have the skills, you don't have the industry knowledge to get the job. That's affecting the mental health. They're going right back to uni, studying more, or trying to prove themselves that they have skills. Not that they don't have skills. Everybody has the soft skills or the industry skills, or the employability skills. They name it differently, but these are the skills that we all have. They're just not amplified enough. So at the end of the day, when students are out there looking for a job, they feel down, they feel disappointed. That affects the mental health. And at the end of the day, experience is essential. We've all learned about something when we've tried a food from a different country, or we met someone from a different background. We learn so much about it rather than reading a book or watching a documentary. And that's all it's about. It's experience. Experience and knowledge combined can really help young people these days, or anyone, I believe. So with that, just the final sort of walk through the programs that we do. They're all plug-and-play programs. As I mentioned earlier, we do the virtual work experience. We've just launched our first program, in fact, yesterday. It is in different industry, but it's an environmental scientist virtual work experience in partnership with a national employer. So that's a really fantastic program, and we're looking to build different programs in cybersecurity, health, and engineering as well. We've got a few good things coming up, and the other programs are executive or leaders job shadow, where students who want to pursue and have that leadership skill developed early on, we link them up with executive leaders in the real world, and industry education, which are just a quick tour that we do for students who would want to know what's industry about. So that's overall what we do and who I am. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. That's really interesting. And I love how you connect our students with industry specialists so they can actually hear and to be able to provide a space where students can ask those questions to the industry experts as well, just to be able to gather a better idea of what's actually happening and the reality of industry as well. Thank you so much. Next one, person that I'd like to introduce you to is Dr. Grania Oates, and she is the CEO of Quitch.
Right. Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you to ACS for organising this session today, and also for the Why Not Consulting Group, who were the people who introduced me to Catherine. So I'll start off by explaining that firstly, I am an educator, a teacher myself, and what I discovered was that essentially the way I was teaching the students was simply not working for them. I had an issue with failure rates and with low retention and so on. And this is, I teach, I should say, first year accounting, so don't hold that against me. But it's an issue the world over. And so essentially what I went about doing was co-designing a solution with the students. So I think this is a really important point when we talk about edtech companies and we talk about education and what we need to do. I think really, really important that we listen to the student voice and that we just don't make all of the decisions in our own right. So essentially, with the issues that we came across, I talked to the students about what are some of the issues that you were seeing. And there was a number of things they talked about. They talked about struggling with keeping engaged with the content. It was not fun enough. It was not, they were getting distracted. They talked about on their mobile phones by playing games and so on. And I thought we can take some of these things that are currently distracting them by adding them to the learning process. So essentially what I did was took the elements of gamification that the students were used to and actually built that into the learning process. So that would engage them along the journey. They earn points, they earn badges, they compete against one another. And essentially they said this would work, this will keep us engaged. They also talked about the fact that actually the solution had to be mobile, because they said everywhere we go, we have our mobile phone with us. We don't always have a laptop. We don't always have access to a laptop or a desktop, but we always do have our mobile phone. And this was in particular all around formative assessment. So what the students talked about was they wanted a solution that, as I said, was going to be fun, and we can't argue with wanting to have fun while you learn. But I think one of the important things as well was they talked about wanting to feel safe and that there would be no consequences. Now, when they talked about that, what they actually meant was that it would allow them to practice the material as often as they required without being penalized for that. So which allows you to do that. So it can be used across any discipline. So the educator simply pours their own content into it, and then you can set it at the level that you know that your students are at. So feeling safe was the other thing. So they're not identified on the leaderboard. So we'll create a name for you, like a purple kangaroo or something like that. So the idea is, again, it adds to that kind of that fun for the student experience. So in terms of what the educators were challenged with, so we were challenged, as I said, with that learner engagement. How do we get students to engage more? So I can engage with them quite easily in the classroom, but what I wanted to be able to do was actually to reach them outside and also to actually push questions to them when they were outside of class. So I do truly believe that the mobile phone is an underutilized resource. I think we can use it for a lot more good than we currently do. And I think education is a great place to do that. So I wanted to be able to reach them outside. So I would send them push notifications, letting them know when new content had been unlocked. They would jump in, play the game and have fun and learn. So it's about the consolidation and reinforcement of that primary learning. So it's not trying to replace in any way the classroom, but adding to that learning for the students. Also, as an educator, one of the other issues that I had and my colleagues who built this with me was that in real time, I did not know as a cohort what were the areas the students were struggling with. So breaking it down into the different topics, I wanted to be able to identify in real time where is this group struggling, so I can dynamically change my lesson plan. So what I found, in fact, that I was spending way too much time on some areas of the course and nowhere near enough on the other once I was now had this real-time data available to me. So essentially, I wanted to look at, if you like, the performance of the content. But the other thing that was really important is the performance of the individual student. So I wanted to be able to identify in real time which of my students are at risk. And when I talk about at risk, I mean at risk, obviously, of failing. And so I have an element in the game that tells me if these students have attempted these questions, they've got less than 50% right. So what that does, it allows me to intervene early and reach out to these students to offer them support. So the idea is we know from research that the earlier one intervenes, the better outcomes we get for our students. So I wanted to make sure that we were getting all of this information in real time. So the students themselves, they said, as I mentioned, it had to be a mobile solution. They wanted it to be easily accessible, so they just download the app from the App Store as they would any other app. They wanted immediate actionable feedback. So they did not want to wait for a response until they went into the next class and met their teacher. So they immediately get feedback. So they can have a number of attempts to get it right. You as the educator can set that. So I essentially set 3 attempts. And then after that, they're told what the correct answer is. And it allows them to get that immediate information and actually highlights for them through a traffic light system is probably the best way to describe it. Highlighting in red those areas or topics they're struggling with, and then we tell them to go back and focus on these areas. That's not where your strengths lies. And then the green highlights the areas that they're kind of, doing really well in. Orange and yellow kind of in between. So it's this personalized learning journey for the student where they're able to get all of this immediate feedback as they work through and work along on their learning journey. So very much about that personalized real-time analytics, gamified, so they earn those points and badges. So the solution, as I said, so was essentially the very first thing we set out to do was to help and improve the student performance. And in doing that, in building this with the students, they talked about they wanted to have particular content that they could identify what in the terms of the content are their areas of difficulty. They wanted something that reported this back to them immediately and that would help them engage with the content and educate them across this journey. So in a nutshell, which is a gamified content neutral mobile learning platform. So you as the educator pour your content in a web-based platform. The student then immediately downloads the app from the App Store. They register with their school email address, and then it pre-populates with any additional classes that you would add them to. So I look forward to talking to you all very soon in the discussion and the question time. And for now, I'll hand back to Catherine. So thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Grania. That was really interesting to hear about how you've been including the student voice in the development of your app Quiche. So now we're going to go on to the panel discussion, and we've got a couple of questions already planned that will look at the pipeline between education and the industry for our future IT professionals, or our future professionals that will be certainly utilising technology in their career. Again, if you have any questions for any of our speakers, please feel free to pop them into the chat now as well. We will get to them at the very end. So Jason, this question is to you, and it comes about because there's some information on your website with Qubit. And could you provide us with a little bit more information and understanding around the fourth revolution and why these skills are important for our learners today and in their future?
Absolutely, yeah. Great question. The fourth industrial revolution. So, we're to rewind to industrial revolutions past, like steam power, electricity, when the computer age was born with automation. Those industrial revolutions focused on typically a single piece of technology that allowed the industry to leap forward. The difference between those revolutions and the current fourth industrial revolution is now we're not really evolving a single piece of technology. We're focusing more on the confluence of technology. So merging technologies, integrating technologies, and figuring out what can we do with all of these existing great technologies. Aristotle has a great quote, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that, reflects the fourth industrial revolution more than ever. We see that not only in the IT industry, but we see that in our lifestyle. And that is one of the biggest reasons that this skill is so important for, our young kids, young people, learners of today to move forward into the future. I mean, you look at the modern day kitchen appliance, you have refrigerators with, screens to monitor how much food you have, connected to your phone, so that when you're at the grocery store, you can pretty much see, a camera in the fridge, what you have, how much milk you have left, etc. Kind of silly. I know it's overkill. But it's true. Everything is so integrated. Our vehicles, almost every device we interact with day to day is so integrated. So, being understanding how these different technologies work together and what we can do by combining different technologies will always benefit us now and moving forward into the future.
Thank you so much for that answer, Jason. Tual and Grania, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, I can add to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's as Dawal, or Jason, I should say, said, there's such an important kind of move towards, in terms of the whole education sector, in terms of what are the skills that are required for our students. And when I was doing some research for this webinar today, I mean, there's a list of 10 top technologies that are ruling the EdTech sector today. And so I actually thought I would list those, and I thought I would actually kind of put this then back to the teachers and ask, are you actually covering this in schools with your students? So they talk about artificial intelligence, learning analytics is another one, gamification, AR, VR, Internet of Things, blockchain, wearables, cloud computing, video learning, and so on. And so I was thinking about, in terms of, that's a very crowded list, actually, is one of the things I thought. But I think it's also very difficult for teachers, within the time that they have, how do they actually identify what they are going to focus on? And I think that's where we need to kind of come together as a sector and look at how can we actually share resources, if you like, rather than each school or each teacher having to kind of reinvent their own. Is there a way that we can come together, support one another, especially given the current situation we are in, and actually pull some resources together and share those amongst the teachers, and then obviously passing that on to the students as an opportunity for them to look at all of these key kind of things that are currently required, and then how can they actually develop those skills towards that. So just to add that bit, Catherine, to it.
Thank you so much. That's really insightful. Our next question is directed at Dwala. From your experience, what are the important skills we need to promote in order to prepare our students so they are ready to start their career?
Look, we're all aware of how rapidly the world is transforming, and digitization is sort of, making a huge difference, and people have to stay ahead of the wave or fall behind. And in a very simple sort of words, if I can say, to thrive in this digital workplace, students definitely need a broad range of skills, but strong cognitive skills and strong socio-economical skills, emotional, I meant so strong cognitive and strong socio-emotional skills are sort of very two important skills that will help them in this day and age. I mean, just looking at recent example, right? COVID. No one was prepared. Let me retry it. Let me say that again. Not many people were prepared to work from home, and they found it difficult. Some liked it, some didn't like it. When you look at the whole scene and you look at how people had to adapt and work online most of the times through whether they're using Teams, Slack, Zoom, they had to communicate digitally, and communicating digitally requires another level of skills because, words don't carry emotion that easily, and we've all made mistakes of writing emails where we've read it again, or the colleague have replied it and it wasn't what we meant to say, but it sounded really harsh or whatnot. So you have to learn now, more importantly, you have to learn how to communicate that with that emotion embedded in it, because going forward, again, when I talk to employers, they're telling me that they're going to have half the workforce working from home. And that's going to be challenging for them. The HR people don't have any idea how that's going to work. They're creating policies on the go. So what I'm trying to say is strong cognitive and social emotional skills are really valuable. And look, at the end of the day, even basic level of literacy, numeracy, problem-solving skills in technology-rich environment, and I mean in a technology-rich environment, are key to unlocking most workplaces. Because I'll give you an example. As a 17-year-old, I had to manage an internet cafe business. I had no experience, or no formal or informal qualification or knowledge of computers. Back when I was growing up, we weren't allowed to be in the library on our own. And most of the computer stuff was theory based. I mean, I still remember passing the exam by just filling out multiple choice questions. So I found it hard to jump in that business and run it, because every minute, basically we had about 25 computers that I had to manage. People come and sit, they have no idea how to use it, they'll break something down, and I had to troubleshoot every few minutes and problem solve my way around it. And that's how I learned how to manage computers, PCs, software, hardware. So what I'm trying to say again is good level of literacy, numeracy, and problem-solving skill in technology-rich environment is essential, because when you start, again, looking at the young people, they have the digital, they're digital native, obviously. They have the skills to browse information and communicate, but yet they lack the literacy, numeracy, and problem-solving skills in technology-rich environment. And what I mean by that, if you put them in front of a computer and get them to, give them a problem, break it, like something's not working, camera might not work, a printer's not working, they'll literally throw it out or walk away going, oh, too hard, I can't do it. Because that's the level of problem-solving skill in that technology-rich environment isn't enabled. We've almost given every simple tool to them, and they just don't know how a software works, how the hardware works, and what are the uses of it, and what's the level of complexity, and the student needs to have that conceptual and cognitive skills to grasp what lies behind it. So does that sum it up?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would definitely agree with you with the problem solving as well, because from a primary school classroom teacher as well, so many of my students would just come up to me and just say, oh, I don't have a pencil. And I wanted them, I didn't realize how harsh I was as a teacher. I was firm but fair. But my response always to that was, and what do you want me to do about it? Or how can you solve that problem on your own? Because what I wanted the student then to be able to do is use the ability and the skill to problem solve themselves to then be able to apply that to different areas as well. And especially with the digital technology part of it as well. There's so often that I see when I'm starting out with coding with the students as well, is that they don't actually consider that they may have coded something incorrectly, but they'll look at it and go, the robotics doesn't work. It's not me, it's the robotics. And, they certainly do then lack the problem solving skills to look back at the code and work out where they have gone wrong. Does anyone else want to contribute to this question?
Yeah, I just want to second what Dawal mentioned about communication, and that's, I think in the engineering field, that's often overlooked how important being able to communicate something properly and clearly is. I still work with many engineers, and it's often a challenge sometimes to try to get certain points across or try to understand some of the technical aspects. So I think, that type of skill, understanding the audience you're speaking to, the points you're trying to convey, and how best to wrap those points so that your audience will be able to understand. Because, the biggest important part of communication, the goal is really to get that other person to truly understand what you're trying to say and not just repeating something for yourself. And I think, me being an engineer is guilty of it. I understand the technical jargon, and I often speak to a non-engineer using the same terminology that I understand because I understand what I'm talking about. But that doesn't help in communication. So, knowing something is one thing, and you have to be effective. And in order to do that, communication is vital in doing that. So I absolutely second that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Grania, this question is directed at you. For students who aren't looking for a career in IT, what advice would you give them on utilising technology within their career?
Right. Okay. Well, I guess what I would say in the first instance is, regardless, I think, of what career you choose today, whether that be an educator. So if we take, again, the COVID-19, so many people in education were thrown directly into the whole IT world and had to utilize technology, in many cases, technology they had not used previously, and actually had no choice but to get up to speed, let's face it, pretty promptly and quickly with that technology. So I think, therefore, it's important for students right from the early ages to actually engage with technology. So whether I'm going to be a teacher or a doctor or a nurse or whatever it may be, or a mechanical engineer and so on, the reality is we are going to utilize technology in our careers, I think, is actually probably the bottom line. And I wanted to just take up on something that Jason and Dawal had said before about problem solving. We recently, there's at Swinburne University in Melbourne, they've got a program called Industry-Based Learning, which allows a student to take a year out of their degree and go and work with a tech company, which is something that, and so we at Quitch, we have employed somebody for a year who's been working with us. And when I talked to James about what were some of the key things that he thought was really important in terms of getting the world experience, or what real world experience and work is like, it was actually two things he focused on, and they were actually exactly what the guys had mentioned earlier. One was problem solving. He was talking about the importance of problem solving and being taught those skills, but also creativity. So we talked about in software development that creativity is the other really big thing, and a number of the developers, as they were talking on our team, that was actually one of the things that really came through, that they feel and believe that they're being truly creative, and actually it's one of the things that drove them to become software developers. But I think software developers aside, I think once you decide on whatever career it is you decide to take today, you will be utilizing technology. And I think taking that back to that point about the problem solving and the creativity, I think, are just two really important things. But I think getting kids involved in IT skills from as early an age as we can, I think, is a really important lesson for all of us, so they don't feel lost when they do get out into the world.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for that response. Would anyone else like to share a response to this question as well?
Yeah, look, Catherine, I can't say anything different than what's already said. Doesn't matter what you do, IT is everywhere. It's not a separate industry. It's just embedded and crossing into all different spaces. It's not a department that's in the basement anymore. It's just everywhere. So yeah, the sooner we get students to pick up on those, basic problem-solving skills that technology provide, I think the best they are off.
Thank you so much. Now, Jason, this question is directed at you. How can we prepare our students for the workforce now, even though their workforce may not be for many more years to come?
Yeah, if we're to draw back from a high level, sum it up in a simple, in one word, adaptation would be the most important skill to learn growing up, because of the rate of development of technologies, the rate of development of processes, of changes. Companies have been more dynamic than they have been in the past. And I know, in the past, our mantra was specializing in a certain skill. But because of the high rate of technological development, the lifespan of a single piece of technology is shorter and shorter. So specializing in a single piece of skill or technology might not be as valuable as learning to become highly adaptable and flexible in learning new technologies as they develop, learning how to utilize them. And also, we talked a lot here about problem solving, which is absolutely the most one of the most important aspects of becoming adaptable, because we learn also through problem solving. But I think one of the biggest roadblocks to that is the fear of failure. We often don't want to attempt to problem solve because we are too afraid to fail, and that's a cultural bias. So, I want to encourage, our students that don't be afraid to fail. I have failed so many times. So I didn't cover this in my introduction, but I never formally went to school for electronics. My father started me with very basic electricity, and then I just got books from Radio Shack, and I bought little transistors and resistors and capacitors, and I tried it myself from elementary school, middle school, and I failed a ton of time. I smoked a lot of circuits throughout the years, but eventually, high school, college, things start to work. And I think, God bless my parents, they never worried about, or they never dwelt on my feeling during failure, not in a negative way, not in a positive way. They just kept encouraging me, okay, so this is what we learned. What would be the next solution? And so that got my mind thinking on, just what can we do next? And what Granny said, using creativity to approach problems and seeing it in a different light instead of, getting bogged down and worrying about possibly failing.
Thank you so much for that, especially with that fear of failure as well is massive within schools. And it's almost like it's an ingrained thing that is within our students, and all of a sudden it just appears out of nowhere, especially even in our younger years as well. And especially I find and found with our younger students, because my last class that I taught was a grade 1-2 class, and all of a sudden it kept coming out during our mathematics sessions. And you can see just by this fear of failure, of not getting it right at such a young age, really impacts their attitude towards mathematics later on in life as well. Dewal, this question is related to you and the experience that you have at Grandshake.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. So the question is, what's our experience in working with schools, and what are our findings? and how's GrandCheck assisting that. So just to give everyone a quick recap, we started in 2017. We launched straight off the bat, we launched a campaign called the Grand Student Survey, where we connected with a range of industry stakeholder, local, federal educators, also jobs and government agencies, parents and local community associations, and students to learn where the gap lies. And part of that, we collected tons of quantitative and qualitative data to understand, why there is a growing gap between education and real world. And sort of the constant pain that we came across was the students not being able to gain enough experience. So after having tons of conversation, we ended up building a beta version of a platform, basically. And what it did was it was kind of like a LinkedIn and Seek combined, where we would, through the platform, a particular school would have account on the platform. They would invite their local industry partners and employers have ability to create a 60-second video job application. There could be a local plumber down the road who's probably not good at writing a job description on his own. We wanted him to get on the phone and use a short video to just give his pitch. That this is me, I'm Matthew, I work down here, I've worked with Joseph, and this is what we do. I mean, he might not get luck with the 99% of the students that are probably looking at different careers, but we wanted to connect him with that one kid who absolutely loved doing plumbing, and that's what he wanted to do. And find two authentic people who wanted to sort of, work together or have fun in life. So that was the concept. It was pre-TikTok. Wish I had thought of a TikTok pivot, but we didn't. But look, it was a fantastic platform. It was a video CV platform that connected employers and students who were interested would have to, in response, create a 60-second video application saying, hey, this is me, I'm Catherine, I'm really interested in this job. They don't have to write a CV because, again, CV are just copy and paste in computer language. It's Control-C and Control-V. That's what we all do at that age. So look, overall, that sort of application was out there. We trialed it for at least a year and a half, but in my experience and as a business, what we did is we built a hammer and we gave it to the school. It's a fantastic tool. It will help your school connect with local partners and help your students gain more experience. And every school could have customized experience that they could build with their partnership. But at the end of the day, we realized that we gave them a hammer and they just wanted a hole in the wall. So with that hammer, nothing happened. Literally, we sat there, we tried to get schools on board and we pushed them so much. We tried as much as possible, but they just did not have time or resources to, first reach out there, build their partnership, continue to maintain that partnership, get students on board. Think of it, it's such a huge task. It's a culture change. It's a massive culture and dynamics change, not from a careers person's perspective, but from each faculty perspective, getting their buy-in. And oh my God, it was painful. So since COVID, the global pandemic has sort of changed everything for everyone, and that has impacted us as well. What we did is we did a massive, we call pivot. What it is, it's a virtual work experience. What we're doing is we are reaching out to national employers and national organizations who have a wealth of experience in their industry. They're obviously reputed organizations in their industry, and we're forming partnership and we're building different programs and different jobs and being able to offer these different jobs to students all the way up in Cairns to someone in Tasmania, to Darwin, to WA, to Perth, to Brisbane, having to offer the same level of experience that's co-designed in partnership with the industry professionals who are currently working in the industry has been phenomenal. And that's been such a shift, such a relief for schools because they're not able to facilitate because of the economical and the social stress in the workforce, they're not able to send kids out there, and this might be for a long time. So us being able to adapt to the way that students can gain experience is a true example of, what Jason said before. It's the adaptability. We need it. We need our students to have it. And that's what's going to make them a contributing global citizen, and us as a society make a stronger society.
Thank you very much. And Grania, this is a question directed at you, is why is connecting our students with real life experiences more powerful than teaching content? Should teachers be worried that the real life content doesn't directly align to the curriculum?
I think so. There's, obviously a couple of parts to that question. So firstly, why is it important to connect students with the real world that they're going to be moving into? I think it is critically important, because otherwise I think not that necessarily we're setting them up to fail, but we're setting them up into launching them into a world that is not at all what they kind of expected. And I think that can have a number of consequences. So one, obviously, we should be allowing students to be aware and making them be aware of what are the skill sets that we need in the workplace today. So obviously the teachers and the schools need to align the content with that skill set that they're actually embedding, if you like, into the student. But because therefore when the students come out of school and graduate, that they have the skills that are required. But also I think if you're going out into the real world and you have a set of skills that you've been taught and suddenly you realize that they're not at all what's actually required, I think that can have massive implications in terms of and the personal impact it can have on an individual in terms of mental health, in terms of not being able to contribute perhaps, and so on. So I think it is really important that we do connect students with the real world experiences. But I think we need to be kind of smart about the way we do that, and again look at how can we scale and how can we use resources wisely in that way. So, for example, you could use Quit, you could use another platform where we actually go out and do podcasts or short videos of, say, people like you, Catherine, or whoever, and talk about what they're actually doing in that world, in that workplace today. And then we can scale that type of thing and actually share it with students across the globe, so they're aware of what the expectations are when they get out into that workplace. So that we're setting people up to really flourish, I guess, and excel rather than the other way around, which I think is critically important. So I think it's about building resources that we can scale, and that obviously then they can be shared broadly across the world. So yes, I think it is important. And I think, in fact, it's critically important for, as I said, a number of reasons.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And a final question is for all of our panels is I actually realized that all of you are actually from your own startups. And what I wanted to get your opinion is how working within a startup has changed your perception of IT and the IT industry.
This is Jason. I suppose I can start with that. Within the IT industry, there are so many fantastic technologies to help our team, our founding team, communicate, collaborate, work together more efficiently. But it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes we feel that there's this new technology, we should use that. It's going to help us increase our communication process or our engineering design process. And oftentimes we can get overwhelmed by the amount of technology that we have to manage, and it becomes a burden versus a help. So, I think it changed my understanding of carefully selecting technology, and also understanding the proper timing to use that technology. More isn't always better, and that was one of the things I've learned. But once the team has accepted a certain piece of technology or process, then it can do wonders. But having the technology on its own does not necessarily make that improvement.
Absolutely. Is anyone else would like to answer that one too?
Sure, I will. Sorry, Dawal, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll definitely go ahead. Look, guys, being in a startup, generally, people generalize that you're in a tech or IT industry by default. So that's something I've found. Startups get generalized into technology or IT, and that's not the truth. I 100% agree with Jason that it's a double-edged sword when it comes to technology. Having knowledge of all these tools, you can easily get lost. But at the end of the day, what matters as a startup, and I know that because I've failed tons of time, is the fact that you are a business. You're just like a plumbing shop down the road, or you're just like a bakery down the road. They use the ovens to bake breads, which again have all the technology and computers and smarts in it. The plumber down the road, who is again using digital measurement tools, is using technology. As a startup, we use different tools to get our job done. But at the end of the day, it's a business. You got to make the business work, and you have to have a mission and make the business work so that it survives to follow that mission through and bring people along on that journey. So that's something that I've learned. IT is very much general, like startups are generalizing to IT industry.
Thank you very much.
Catherine, I might just add to that. I guess one of the things I noticed, as the guy said, about all of the different technologies and options there are available to you, and there's a lot of very cool technologies out there. And I guess one of the important things I think is that needs to be said here is that you be very true and very clear on what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and stay focused on that, because I think it can be very easy for people to get lost and look at all of these kind of cool solutions and so on, but what is the problem that we're trying to solve? So it's about are you trying to solve a problem, or are you trying to retrofit this very cool solution to a problem after the event? So I think you need to be very clear in the first instance what your problem is that you're trying to solve, and just use the technologies that are going to help you to do that, rather than to get lost in the world of the technologies that are available to you.
Oh, absolutely. You could easily dive down a rabbit hole and never surface again. We will now have, we've got a couple of questions for the audience. So thank you so much for bringing in some questions for us. So one of them is, and this is a general question, is what are the hurdles expected to face during the first year in an IT workplace for graduates, and how could we tackle those issues?
I can jump in there if you like. Yep.
Go for it, Granny.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, I think probably, certainly it's been our experience that in the first instance that person who's just out of college and so on, I think can feel very overwhelmed by the whole experience and so on, because there's just so much to learn and so on. So I think it's actually, we need to keep that kind of human-centered focus on bringing people into your organization, and just ensure that they feel very welcomed into the team, and more importantly that they too have a voice. Just because there's a new person to the team, I think it's really important, because what you want in your organization, you want people to be innovative, you want them to be able to speak up and not be afraid to fail, as I think it was Jason had mentioned earlier. So I think it's really important to make them part of the team. They have learned their basic skill set. You wouldn't have employed them otherwise. And I think it goes back to, again, that areas we talked about before, about allowing them to be creative and to talk more about problem solving, and just really, I think, include them as part of the team, and making sure that they feel welcomed and that we are there to support them, I think, is an important thing. Over to you, Jason.
Yeah, you nailed it right on the head. Integrating into that team culture, that team environment, how that team, or I suppose that particular job, how they communicate, and learning the different processes of communication. If you're in the IT field, there's most likely some kind of development task process that you'll have to follow. You want to be very comfortable with understanding that process and knowing how to communicate challenges, anything that might shift the overall timeline of the team. That needs to be communicated, as soon as possible. But overall, it's not so much as a question of your skill per se, if they end up hiring you, but more about being able to communicate and integrate with that team as well as possible.
Thank you so much, Jason. Now, Jason, there was one question that came through that's directed to you, and it's how do you respond to schools and teachers who are intimidated by robotics, data, and technology in general? How are they reassured that they're not alone and it's all okay?
Yeah, again, it is so intimidating when we're talking about coding and we want to put coding in science classrooms. My best advice would be, don't worry so much about the nitty gritty. Have fun and explore it. We're going to make mistakes. Do it together. And I think, as teachers are placed on a pedestal, and it puts so much pressure on teachers, especially when, a teacher's trying to teach something on coding per se or robotics, and a student has a question. The teacher is expected to know the answer, but what if we can foster an environment or a way of learning that doesn't expect a direct answer for every single question? Instead, we use problem-solving methods so that the students and essentially the entire classroom can work as a team to figure out how to overcome those challenges. And I've actually seen many classrooms very successful at that. The teachers don't have a robotics background. They're, told to teach robotics for this semester, and they weren't afraid, and they essentially let the kids have at it, have the kids figure it out, empower the kids. And I think that could be, one approach. And as a teacher, we're just, there to facilitate, but also encourage the kids and get them to go a little closer to the edge without, the fear of failure, and constantly just encouraging the kids and keeping them curious.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. There were so many questions that came through, but there was such a great discussion that I wish we could stay on for a lot longer, but I know there's many people out there that will need to rest up because you've had a hard day at work, especially if you're teaching and it's towards the end of your term. I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and certainly thank you so much to our three presenters that have given us such insight into their careers and their businesses and how they're helping educators, but also looking at what's happening within that technology and IT space and within the industry as well. All of the information will be available via our ICT Educators community platform. I will be putting through a forum and creating a forum for you, which summarises the webinar and just some of the key points that each of our presenters spoke about. And also any of the resources that they do have will also be attached within that forum as well. Also, if you are looking to connect with me, I do a lot of work around digital technologies within schools, so please certainly contact me. I have given you the contact details of all of our three speakers, so please connect with them via LinkedIn. And finally, if you are looking for some resources around the digital technologies curriculum, have a look at the space within the ICT Educators community as well. So we have a load of resources that will help you from that foundation to year 10 space, and it does incorporate that real life that we have been speaking about today as well. That is all we have time for today. And our final slide that we're going to be talking about is the very last webinar that we are running for this series as well. So the final webinar is I'm going to give you an opportunity to hear about the story and the journey of the ICT educators within ACS, how I've been connecting with schools to create these resources, and where I'm going to go next with the program as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully you've been I don't know about you, but I have so much information in my brain at the moment. I just don't know where to begin with it. But hopefully you've got a couple of takeaway points that you can take away with you and then implement into your classes. Thank you so much for joining us today.